Hi, everybody. I see that people are still joining us for our webinar today, so I'm just going to let everybody take about another minute for people to join us, and we'll get started promptly at 2 o'clock. All right. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Operation Parents webinar, Dating Abuse, What Every Parent Needs to Know. Our presenter today is Cassie Drockelman of the Mary Byron Project. My name is Mary Beth Uberti, and I am the Operation Parents Director of Program Development. We are so happy to have you join us today for this 45-minute webinar. Before we get into the content, I would like to take a few moments to go over the features of the GoToWebinar panel so you can fully participate in the session. First, if you take a look at your GoToWebinar panel, you will see an orange box at the very top with an arrow in it. That is your Grab tab. This allows you to maximize the panel or minimize it so you can see the entire screen. So I just invite you to click on that arrow right now to minimize your control panel, and then click on it again to open up the panel. And I'd like you to open it now so that we can completely just go over some of the features and view them. The next section we're going to talk about is the question section. So further down in your panel, you will see the words question. And give me a minute here. And just so you know that all attendees will be muted during the presentation. We would like, however, to hear from you via the questions section. About halfway down the control panel, you will see this section. You will send both questions and comments here. There are 3 panels. The top panel will show you any questions you've already posted. And directly below that is another light blue panel where you can type your questions and then select send privately. So I'd like you to just take a moment to try this out. So if you could click in that second panel and send me your name and where you're joining us. Make sure you click send message to staff when you're done typing your response. So if everybody could just take a moment to find your question section and send your name and where you're attending from. All right, starting to see some come in. I see Liz from Washington. Thank you for joining us. Amy from Massachusetts. Stephen from Philadelphia. Hey, I'm from Philly, I'm Northeast Philly, Bucks County. Kelly from Crestwood. Jennifer from Kentucky. And I see Eric from Arizona. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I'm glad everybody's able to join in here and use that section. Just keep in mind that if you do have any questions during this live webinar, to use this as a way to communicate with us here at Operation Parent. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. We may go over the 45-minute mark with questions and answers, so if you need to leave the webinar, please do so. The next section right below that is the handout section. For today's webinar, we will provide you with 5 handouts, and they are already loaded and available for you to download. The 5 that you will see are: how do you know if your teen is in an unhealthy dating relationship? Know the warning signs. 10 tips for healthy relationship. Teen dating violence, and dating abuse, what every parent needs to know. And that last one is the slide handouts from today. So if you would just click on the handout, double click, and that will begin the download process. The handouts will only be available while we are in session. Once the webinar has ended, the session is closed and you will not be able to download the handouts. So I encourage you to take a moment to do so now. If you are listening to the recording of this, just so you know, we will send out all handouts tomorrow. So 24 hours after this event is over, you will receive an email, 2 of them. One will contain the recording of this event, but the second one will contain all handouts as attachments, so you will get them then. There will be a short survey sent directly to you after this webinar. It'll take about 2 minutes to complete. If you have the time, we would appreciate your feedback. So now I would like to turn over the webinar to our presenter, Cassie, and she will take it from here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I've spent about the last decade supporting victims of intimate partner violence. I began advocating for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault when I was in college as a volunteer. And since then, I've worked for the Texas Council on Family Violence, the National Dating Abuse Helpline, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and Family Tree, which is a community domestic violence agency in Denver. I now work for the Mary Byron Project in Louisville, Kentucky. A little bit about the Mary Byron Project. It is named in honor of a woman who was killed in 1993. Mary, who was a graduate of Assumption High School in Louisville, Kentucky, had been raped, assaulted, and stalked by her former boyfriend in late 1993. He was arrested and jailed for these crimes, but someone posted his bail and he was released without Mary knowing. And on her 21st birthday, he came to her workplace and shot and killed her as she got in her car to leave. So as you can imagine, the community and her family was stunned and heartbroken. County officials saw a dire need and began working on a system that will let crime victims know whether their offenders are in jail, where they're held, and when they are released. And exactly 1 year after Mary's murder, Jefferson County, Kentucky instituted this technology. It's called VINE, Victim Information and Notification Every Day, and it's now used in thousands of communities across the nation and saves thousands of lives, makes thousands of people feel safer, knowing that the person who has harmed them, if they're in jail, when they're released, all of that. John Byron, who's Mary's father, said that if they had had this technology, Mary would still be alive. So that's our mission here at the Mary Byron Project, is to cultivate and support innovative solutions like VINE that are working to address the root causes of this epidemic and help build safer, healthier communities. Because unfortunately, we know that what happened to Mary is not a problem of the past. So, for example, we have our Celebrating Solutions Awards, which is where we recognize 5 programs across the country each year that are doing innovative work to end intimate partner violence. So we give them funds to help grow their program, and we spread awareness of their efforts so that other agencies can implement them and create similar positive change in their own communities without having to reinvent the wheel. We're also committed to educating businesses about workplace violence through our WorkSafe initiative. So this program provides training and policy development in order to help business leaders become proactive about protecting employees who are victims of domestic violence and those that they work with. So this is just a couple of our programs. If you'd like to learn more about us and our work, please visit our website, marybyronproject.org. But I want to make sure we dive right into the topic today because we have a lot to talk about. This is a heavy issue, and one that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours. So today I'm really just going to be providing some general information and overview, but I want you to leave with lots of resources. We've got the handouts. I'll give you lots of different websites and things like that so that if you leave our webinar today and think, I need to know more, some of this sounds familiar, some of this is happening to my child, I want to make sure that you have those resources since we won't be able to get into the nuts and bolts of everything here with our time today. So today we're really just going to talk about the prevalence of the issue. We're going to talk about dating abuse, what it is, what it looks like, and then how you can help your teen if we go through some of these signs and red flags and you feel like your teen may be experiencing dating abuse. And then again, we'll end with resources for further learning beyond the webinar today. The learning outcomes that I'm hoping for us today, I want us to be able to identify abusive behaviors, learn ways that we can support young survivors, and then again, identify those tools and resources for further guidance. So let's start out by talking a little bit about the issue itself. So studies have shown that teens are at the same, if not higher risk of dating violence as they're beginning to explore relationships. So many teens who have been victims of dating abuse accept it as normal. They never report it to anyone. And those who do reach out for help find that there are fewer resources available to them. So why aren't young victims talking about the abuse? Maybe they're ashamed to talk to friends or family members, or they've talked to someone who minimized their experience or blamed them for the abuse, or they're just not sure what they're to do. Or maybe they don't realize that's what happening to them is abusive. So we'll talk about throughout this webinar that there's a lot of negative examples in the media, a lot of things that teens and young adults are seeing in music videos and songs and TV shows and movies, are really examples of unhealthy or abusive relationships, but they're not labeled as such. And so sometimes people, especially teens and young adults, might be experiencing some of these things, but they think that they're normal, so they don't think to reach out for help. And there are some specific reasons why teens may not feel safe talking to their parents about these issues. So it could lead to experiencing more control, for example. So what we're going to talk a lot about today is that abusive relationships are all about power and control, one partner controlling the other partner. And so they might worry that if they tell their parents what's going on, they might experience more control. So their parents might forbid them from seeing their partner, or they might take away their phone or take away other privileges. And when they're already experiencing control from their partner, this can just exacerbate the problem instead of supporting or empowering them. Maybe they're not supposed to be dating at all. So it's common for relationships, even completely healthy ones, to be secret from parents or adults because they're not allowed to date yet. So when secret relationships become abusive, young survivors feel punishment just for dating in addition to the abuse. Or if the survivor identifies as LGBTQ, so they're in a same-sex relationship, and maybe they are not out to their family, it may not feel safe for them to disclose the abuse. So one thing I like to talk about whenever I'm talking about abusive relationships or healthy relationships or anything in between is what we call the relationship spectrum. And I feel like it's a really helpful tool because it can help folks visually see that relationship exists on a spectrum. So, I think sometimes when it comes to relationships, people kind of think about things in black and white terms. So it's either healthy or it's abusive. And what we know is that these behaviors actually exist on a spectrum, and it's really important to know the context behind those behaviors. So, for example, healthy relationships are based on equality and respect. Partners make decisions together, and they can openly discuss whatever they're dealing with, like relationship problems. They enjoy spending time together, but they can be happy apart. If we move a little over into this kind of middle unhealthy section, that's going to be relationships that are based on attempts to control the other person. So one person tries to make most of the decisions. He or she may pressure their partner about sex or refuse to see how their actions can hurt the other person. In an unhealthy relationship, partners feel like they should only spend time with their partner and no one else. On the abusive end of things, abusive relationships are based on an imbalance of power and control. So one person is making all the decisions about sexual choices, friend groups, boundaries, even what's true and what's not true in the relationships. They find that they're spending all their time together, and the person who's being abused feels like they can't talk to other people, especially about what's really happening in the relationship. So this may seem like fairly basic info to some of us, but it can be really valuable to talk about these concepts with teens so they know they have a right to basic things like respect and equality in their relationships. So I did a webinar last week about healthy relationships, and we talked a lot about just the importance of talking to your child about relationships, talking about what's healthy, talking about what's not healthy. As you hear things in songs on the radio when you're in the car together, or if a music video comes on and you watch it together, just bringing these things up and talking about these things is hugely helpful and hugely important. And by talking about, specifically by talking about the spectrum, which you can do in different ways. I'll tell you about a website called Love is Respect throughout this webinar, and they have a kind of printout version of this that you could show to your child and talk to them about it that way. Or you can just kind of talk about these concepts generally, but it really helps give the idea that things aren't always black and white in relationships. There's this gray area in between, and a lot of it depends on the context of what's happening. So for example, let's say someone's partner has started telling them who they can and can't talk to or hang out with. So if the person who's experiencing this is thinking about their relationship in black and white terms, they might think that because they're not being physically hurt, they're not being hit, that they're not being abused. But setting rules like this is really controlling and definitely very unhealthy. And if there are other controlling behaviors in the relationship as well, then that would definitely move things over into that abusive category. So we're going to talk a lot today about kind of that context of things and if it's in the context of power and control. So hopefully as we go through the rest of the information today, it'll kind of give you a clearer picture of how the spectrum exists and how to talk to your teen about it. So let's talk about dating abuse. The technical definition of dating abuse that professionals often refer to is a pattern of abusive behaviors where one partner exerts power and control over someone they are dating or involved with in some type of a relationship. So to sum it up in very simple terms, dating abuse happens when one person's choices or behaviors are used to hurt or control someone they're dating. While we define dating violence as a pattern, that doesn't mean the first instance of abuse is not dating violence. It just recognizes that dating violence usually involves a series of abusive behaviors over the course of time. And many people think of abuse as involving only physical force, like I mentioned earlier, but the reality is that dating abuse also comes in many different forms, such as verbal, sexual, digital, and emotional abuse. Dating abuse isn't an argument every once in a while or a bad mood after a bad day. It's this pattern of control. It's this continuum of behaviors that a person uses to gain power over another. So let's look specifically at some of those different types. Because what I found in my working with victims of domestic violence is that while the physical abuse is the most visible, often some of these other types are the most damaging and have the most long-term effects. So they are just as serious, if not more serious, than the physical abuse that we often think of when we think of domestic violence or dating abuse. So let's talk a little bit about emotional abuse or verbal abuse. So those are going to be non-physical behaviors such as threats, insults, constantly monitoring or checking in on someone, excessive texting, humiliating people in front of their friends and family, intimidation, isolation. It's really this big umbrella term for hurting someone emotionally. Stalking is going to include being repeatedly watched, followed, or harassed. It's important to remember that it's not just someone following you home or following you around in your car, although that can absolutely, those are definitely examples of stalking. It's also unwanted gifts or calls or text messages or Facebook messages. Just that kind of constant harassment falls under stalking as well. Physical abuse, I think we probably all have a pretty good idea of, just any intentional use of physical force with the intent to cause fear or injury. So hitting, shoving, kicking, using a weapon. Sexual abuse is going to be any action that impacts a person's ability to control their own sexual activity or the circumstances in which sexual activity occurs. So this can include restricting access to birth control or condoms, ignoring someone's refusal to engage in sexual activities by repeatedly using emotional, verbal, or physical pressure. And then digital abuse is a huge one when it comes to teens and young adults. The use of technology such as texting and social networking to bully, harass, stalk, or intimidate a partner. So often this behavior is a form of verbal or emotional abuse that's perpetrated through technology. So it can look like sending unwanted explicit pictures, demanding or coercing someone into sending explicit pictures of themselves, telling a partner who they can and can't be friends with or follow on social media, going through a partner's phone or social media accounts to keep tabs on them, constantly texting so that one person feels like they can't be separated from their phone for fear of upsetting the other person. Digital abuse, like I said, in particular, is especially prevalent and really often normalized among young folks. So a lot of these behaviors that fall under this digital abuse category, when we talk to young teens about them, they often just feel like that kind of stuff is normal. So this is where you all can really come in as parents and just helping them realize that, no, like getting 100 text messages from your partner every hour and feeling like you have to respond or they're going to be mad at you, that's not healthy. That's not okay. You deserve to be able to take a break and have activities and time apart from your partner. That's just one example. So what does dating abuse look like? So when we think about kind of the red flags, these are some things that we're going to be looking out for. So isolating partner from friends or family, physically hurting the partner in any way, constant put downs or name calling, extreme jealousy, controlling behavior and setting rules, what the person can wear, who they can see, what they can do, explosive temper, blaming and making false accusations. What this often looks like in relationships is constantly accusing the person of cheating, or constantly blaming the person for everything that goes wrong in the relationship. Mood swings, possessiveness, telling their partner what to do, what they can wear, how they can act, who they can see, constantly checking up on them to know who they are, who they're with. So, for example, this, a lot of these kinds of things happen in the context of the relationship. So we as outsiders might not necessarily see some of these things. So some ways that you might know that this is happening to your child, for example, is if they start dating someone new and then over time they stop doing the things they like to do, such as playing soccer, or they drop the theater club, things like that. So, this might be a sign that the person that they're dating is trying to isolate them from their friends and keep them from having that support system or tell them what to do. Along that same vein, they start dating someone and they stop hanging out with their friends because their new partner gets mad when they do. For example, a guy doesn't let his girlfriend have any guy friends or even talk to guys at school. So if you're hearing or seeing things like that, that can be a red flag. All of this stuff is, again, the context is really important. So we also know, young love can be very all-encompassing, and sometimes teenagers start dating and they do kind of hang out with just the two of them a lot right at first. That's not necessarily the same thing as what I'm talking about. This is more like the person wants to hang out with their friends, but they feel like they can't. They start dropping activities and it doesn't seem like something that they want to do. It's more something that they have to do. So again, that context is really important. And what you'll notice with all of these things is they involve control. So when these things are happening, one partner is controlling the other and the relationship is not equal. There's not that mutual respect there. And that's what abuse is all about. One person's need to have control over the other. So that's something to keep in mind when you're trying to determine if a behavior is abusive or not, or just part of normal kind of young love, and how encompassing that can be. Okay, so we've talked about the issue, the signs to look for. Again, I had to go through that so quickly just because of the amount of time that we have here today. If you want to know more about those warning signs, those red flags, there's a really great website that I'm going to reference throughout called loveisrespect.org. They're the National Dating Abuse Helpline, and they have some really great resources on their website for it's really for teens and young adults. So it's a really great resource for your child. They also have really good information for parents and friends and family. So they have quizzes that you can take, quizzes that the kids can take to determine if their relationship is healthy or not. There's really good information about that relationship spectrum that we talked about. A lot of interactive things where, like, for example, your child can go on and answer questions about their relationship and it can help them figure out if it's healthy or not. Another really great resource is that they are a helpline. So they have a phone line, chat line, and text line where you or your child can reach out and talk to an advocate who's trained in these issues and get more information. So, for example, if we finish this webinar today and you still have questions, you can reach out and talk to an advocate there. Or if you think your child is experiencing some of the things that we talked about, they can reach out to a Love is Respect advocate as well. If they don't necessarily, maybe they're not comfortable talking to you about it yet, or they're not willing to talk to anyone else, it's completely anonymous, and it's sometimes a way that young people feel comfortable kind of taking that first step to reach out. So, after we've talked about the signs to look for, I want to make sure that you leave knowing some things that you can do as well. And it can definitely be scary to suspect that your teen might be in an abusive relationship. As a parent, I know that your instinct is to help your child in whatever way that you can. And this need can drive us as parents to quickly react, but sometimes what feels like the right plan of action could actually stop the conversation before it begins. So here's some things that you can keep in mind when you're trying to help your child and kind of open up those conversations. So the first step is to educate yourself on dating abuse, which you're all doing by being on this webinar today. And I think it really says a lot about you as a parent that you're willing to take time out of your day to learn about this difficult subject. It is definitely not easy to sit down and talk about these scary things that could happen to our child. So you're doing something really brave just by being here, and hopefully the information that you leave with today will help you support your child if these things do come up for them in their relationships. It's important to let them know that you're concerned about their safety. So you can say things like, you don't deserve to be treated like this, or you deserve to be in a relationship where you feel safe and are treated with respect. It's really important to be supportive and understanding. So we want to be really non-accusatory. If they do open up, it's important to be a good listener. So they might feel ashamed of what's happening to them. They may fear that you're going to overreact or blame them or be disappointed in them. Some teens worry that their parents just won't believe them or won't understand what's happening. So if they do come to you to talk, please let it be on their terms and meet them with understanding, not judgment. And along that same vine, accept what your child is telling you. So believe that they're being truthful. Showing skepticism could make them hesitant to tell you when things are wrong and drive them closer to their abusive partner. So offering that unconditional support and making sure they know that you believe that they're giving you an accurate account is really important. And then letting them know that abuse is not normal and not their fault. Everyone deserves a healthy, nonviolent relationship. Another tip that I really like to give friends and family as well is to talk about the behaviors, not the person. And what I mean by this is to avoid bashing your child's partner. So even if you are learning all of the stuff that your child's partner is doing to them and it's horribly abusive things and you think they're a jerk and a deadbeat and all of these things, what we know is that if you say all of those things to your child, even if they can start to recognize that the things that their partner is doing to them are not okay, they still might have feelings for that person. They still might care about that person. And if you spend the conversation bashing that person and degrading that person, what that might actually do is drive them closer to that person to feel like they need to defend that person, defend their relationship, defend their choice to be with that person. So it's really a lot more helpful to spend your energy and time talking about, that the behaviors are not okay, that you're worried about the changes that you've seen in them. You used to love playing soccer and you don't play soccer anymore. Those kinds of conversations that make it more about your concern and not about dumping on the person that they might care about. Avoiding ultimatums is really important as well. So, for example, when we see that our child is being hurt, we want that to just end, right? And so our instinct might be to say, if you don't break up with them right away, you're grounded, you won't be allowed to date ever again in the future, things like that, things that we feel like will just end the situation. But what we know is that actually is not the most helpful thing for your child. So you want them to truly be ready to walk away from the relationship. If you force the decision, they might be tempted to return to their abusive partner because of unresolved feelings. They may do it in secret again. And we talked about that if they're dating the person in secret, if they're not supposed to be dating them and they still are, and things get worse, then they're definitely not going to be able to come to you and talk to you about that because you've forbidden them from seeing that person. What we also know, and this is a subject I could talk about for hours as well, but I'll just touch on real briefly, is that leaving is the most dangerous time for victims. So trust that your teen knows the situation, they know how their partner may react to that, and they might need some time to figure out how to safely leave. And we're going to talk about that some more as well. Helping them decide on next steps together. So when you're talking to your teen about a plan of action, know that the decision has to come from them. Again, ask what they would like, what next steps they would like to take, what they would like to do. Because if we just force a bunch of things on them, that's going to, again, create those kind of secretive behaviors, which actually in this situation can make things a lot worse. If they're uncomfortable discussing this with you, this is when you can tell them about love is respect. Again, they can call, chat online, or text with an advocate. There's also an interactive safety planning tool, which I'll tell you a little bit more about here in a minute as well, that can be really helpful if they're not ready to talk to you about this yet. So I've mentioned safety planning. Safety planning is just a personalized, practical plan that can help your child avoid dangerous situations and know the best way to react when they're in danger. So it's a set of actions that can help someone lower their risk of being hurt by their partner. And it's going to include specific information about, the person's daily activities, things like that, so it can help them increase their safety at school, at home, and other places that they go on a daily basis. So even if your child isn't ready to end their abusive relationship yet, there are steps you can take to increase safety and be prepared. So one thing you can do is think through the parts of their day to identify times that they may encounter their abusive partner or ex, and think about ways to keep them safe. So for example, if they go to school with their partner, maybe having someone walk with them to their classes, so they're not alone in the hallway. Or if they walk home from school by themselves and their partner knows that they walk home from school by themselves, have a friend or family member or someone walk them home. Just thinking through those times that they may encounter that person. Connect them to resources and information in their area. If you know of a local domestic violence agency that works with teens and young adults, that's a great resource. If you don't know of that, that's partially what a Love is Respect advocate can do. They have a national database and they can look up resources and services in your area. It's really important not to post information about them on social networking sites. So let's say, for example, they have left their abusive partner, so that person is now their ex, and they're trying to stay away from that person. Some social networking sites can reveal someone's current location, either if the photo is geotagged, or they can just tell in the photo where the person is or where they hang out. So it's possible that if they follow them on social media, they'll be able to find them. Or even if your child has blocked their ex, it's possible that their ex's friends are probably friends with your child, so they can hop on their Facebook and see things like that. So just be really careful about social media in this situation. Again, allowing them to make up their own mind. Leaving an abusive relationship can be really difficult and even dangerous. So really talking to those experts, a Love is Respect advocate, school counselors, things like that, to figure out the best way to do that safely. Avoid blaming them. They're getting blamed and belittled from their partner as it is, and so we definitely don't want to add to that or help or make their self-esteem even lower. And then don't give up, even though helping can be really frustrating. So I just want to acknowledge that seeing your child in an abusive relationship is really scary. It's really hard to know what to do. It can also be really frustrating. I just want to validate that all those feelings are really normal. So please feel free to reach out for support for yourself as well as you're going through this. Just quickly, some ideas for safety planning in school. Again, identifying that support system within the school, if they have friends that can walk with them, if they have teachers that they feel comfortable going to, talking to the administration about if they have a teen dating violence policy. If they're able to, if they do go to school together, have separate classes, have separate lunches, see what the administration can do to keep them apart as much as possible. Make sure that their routes to and from school and classes so that you can check in and be aware of their well-being. Make sure they know who they can reach out to, both in school and outside of school. Have them keep a phone with them so they can let others know where they are. You might suggest taking a different route to school or home from school if that's an option. Just minimizing those times that they're alone, or those times where their partner might know where they are or how to reach them. If they go home after school by themselves, just talking about locking doors, screening phone calls, talking to them about the check-ins on social media. Okay. Also, lastly, protective orders are different in every state in terms of whether a teen can get a protective order. Again, protective orders are something I could talk about all day long. Love is Respect website has information state by state on what the rules and laws are in your state based on what's available to your child as a minor. So feel free to check out that website to get more information on that. Protective orders can be tricky if your child is not truly ready to break up. So it's typically not helpful for you to just force a protective order on a teen or young adult. Again, if they're not really ready to break up, if they're going to keep doing it in secret, they won't report those violations. Or because they've kept seeing the person, law enforcement might not take those violations seriously. So again, protective orders are really helpful when your child is ready for that and wants that, and you can look up more information about that on loveisrespect.org. I will fly through this information on safety planning with technology. Again, talking to them about password protecting their phones, using difficult passwords, checking privacy settings. Those privacy settings change. There are default settings on many social media sites that default to using location tracking on photos and stuff like that. I'm going to give you all some really great resources on privacy settings and safety planning with technology. A lot of young people exchange passwords as part of the relationship. So if your teen already has given her partner or his partner their password and she's planning on breaking up, encourage them to change that password first before the breakup so that that person can't go on their social media accounts after the breakup and cause havoc. A lot of times what parents want to do when they find out that their child is in an unhealthy relationship, especially if some of that abuse is happening via their phone, parents want to take the phone away or take the computer access away, feeling like maybe a break will do their child good. The problem is that it really works out that way. So a possessive controlling partner wants to isolate their victim. They want them to believe that no one else loves them the way they do, that no one else understands them. You know, they say things like, if your parents cared, they would want you to be happy and I make you happy, right? So taking away the phone isolates them further and means that they don't have a way to reach out for you to help, to reach out to other people for help. It isolates them from their friends and they need that support system if they're going to be able to break up with their partner. So it's important to think about that instinct to take away the phone, because what we know is that more communication is always better. More ways for you to get a hold of them, more ways for them to get a hold of you. You know, they can talk to their friends about not checking them in, blocking that person on social media, blocking their phone, text messages, things like that. And then it's really important to document any abuse that is happening. So screenshotting, threatening text messages, threatening Facebook messages, anything like that. Take lots of screenshots and document everything. I've mentioned Love is Respect several times. Again, really great website. One thing that I really love about their website is there's an interactive tool that helps create a safety plan. So the way it works is that it asks a series of questions that the user fills in with pertinent information, and then it helps them identify their safety options. So at the end, a safety plan is created that's tailored to the answers that they gave, and it can be viewed online, it can be printed out or sent to a safe email address. So this is something that you can sit down and do with your child if they're willing to do that, or they can do it on their own. It's a really great tool, and this website just has so much great information. I cannot recommend it enough. Some other resources that are really helpful, that'snotcool.com is a resource. Actually, all the rest of these on this list are specifically related to that technology safety, the digital abuse piece. So that'snotcool.com, wiredsafety.org, nnedv.org if you go to the resources tab and the technology safety tab. And then these last two links, which will be in that, you know, you're going to get you're able to download this PowerPoint, so you'll have this page that you can come back and refer to these links. They all have really, really great information and can go into way more detail than we went into today. So I think that's about all that I have. I will turn it back over to Mary Beth for questions and wrap up.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. I just wanted to finish up a few slides and then we'll open it up for questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and send it now. And then after we go through these last few slides, we'll go ahead and take the questions. Just for those, so you know, ways to stay involved with Operation Parent and keep up to date with the information is to like us on Facebook, sign up for our e-newsletter, and purchase a parent handbook, or just some ways to stay involved. Our next webinar in May is Shedding Light on Opioids. And we have Arlene Rice, who is the founder of the Gabriel Project 930, and she is also the author of the book, The Adult Addict. And I just encourage you to join us for that session. She unfortunately has experienced having adult children, her children who were addicted to opioids. Great information on ways to understanding what's going on, but also understanding what you may be seeing in the home has your warning signs that this is happening. So that is going to be on Tuesday, May 15th. at 2 o'clock. You can register online at operationparent.org. These are our parent handbooks. We have a variety of different handbooks for the elementary parent, for the parent with children in elementary school. We have an English, Spanish, and Christian edition. And for those of you that have middle and high school students, we have an English, Spanish, and Christian edition also. You can purchase them directly online at operationparent.org or give a call to our office at the number listed, and we can take care of that over the phone. This is the table of contents of different topics that we do cover in our parent handbook. This is from the middle and high school edition. So as you can see, it's over 40 topics, information such as trends, misconceptions, how would I know I'm seeing the warning signs, and where could I go for more help? So it's a great resource for you to have in your home. And we also do community presentations. I go out into the community talking to parents, caregivers, students on a variety of topics, and this is from a conference, Victory Over Violence. So I just encourage you, if you are a counselor, school administrator, or you would just like to organize parents in your organization, in your community to have an event, please contact operationparent.org. And that is our website and our phone number. And I'm just going to jump over here to our questions and see if there are any questions. And all right, well, you know what? I don't see anything coming in right now for questions. So Cassie, is there anything that you want to expand upon, since we have a few more minutes, that you really wanted to hit again?
Sure, yeah, let me think back through here, because I know I flew through some of those last slides. Let's see here. I think the main thing to really hit on is that you know, again, this is about this power and control thing, right? And so if teens are in an abusive relationship and their partner is trying to control them and control what they do and who they see, you know, I think parents, our instinct is going to be that we just want them to leave and get out of this relationship as soon as possible. And while that instinct is very so understandable and very natural, it's just really important to remember that it's not always that easy and it's not always safe for that to happen. So really, you know, if you do find that your child is in this situation, I really encourage you to reach out for some support on how you can handle it. Reach out to a local domestic violence agency if there's one in town. Reach out to Love is Respect. You know, just figure out a place where you can get some help and think through the best ways and the safest ways to do this for our child, because I think sometimes our instincts on what is best for them, depending on what's going on in their relationship, might make things worse instead of making things better. So just know that none of us know exactly how to handle this perfectly, and it's really individual to the specific situation. So please reach out for help and support for yourself if your family is going through this, and know that there is that support out there and information on how to do what's safest and best for your child.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much for going over this valuable information. We really appreciate it. And parents, we're going to wrap up. And as I mentioned, there is a short survey that will be sent to you directly at the end when I shut down the webinar. I just encourage you to take 2 minutes to fill it out. It just helps us figure out where we're going to next in the future planning, but also how to improve our events. And Cassie, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing all this information with us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.